Great Nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton tonight. With Saving the Union, the latest pressing issue facing Boris Johnson, who today raced to Northern Ireland, are the Conservatives in need of a total restart to tackle some of the biggest problems that have ever faced Britain? Well, Tory grandee and former Brexit Secretary David Davis thinks so. He'll give his advice on what his party should do next at 10:20. But their issues are actually nothing compared to the Labour Party, which is in real crisis as we come to air tonight. So as Andy Burnham and Wes Streeting reportedly prepare secret leadership bids, and with the threat of a retroactive Beargate fine suddenly on the table, is Keir Starmer just done for now? At 10 p.m, I'll get the verdict of my superstar panel, who you'll meet in just a moment. The media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and making her debut, former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda DeLucy. As J.K. Rowling leads the messages of support at a feminist rally marred by aggression from trans activists. How can the Be Kind lefts still claim to be the good guys after dressing in balaclavas to intimidate women? Free Speech Union founder Toby Young analyses why trans people's self-appointed allies may be doing the most damage to their cause. He's uncancelled at 10:40. And with a tribute to the Iron Lady targeted hours after its unveiling in her hometown of Grantham, should the Margaret Thatcher statue be moved to Parliament so it can take pride of place in Westminster? Political activist Kate Smurthwaite's opinion is not for turning, but comedian Jim Davidson and former Tory Minister Edwina Currie, they'll certainly do their best in tonight's clash at 9:20. Why the hell should we allow the World Health Organization to increase their pandemic response powers after advocating devastating lockdowns and cuddling up to China? I'll explain why we're in deep trouble if we allow this dangerous organization or the billionaire hysteric Bill Gates to take control. That's in my digest next. As Nicola Sturgeon is blasted for her independence obsession by the hosts of her stateside jolly, which comes hot on the heels of Sadiq Khan's cannabis trip, will being called out as a, quote, political opportunist on the world stage give the First Minister pause for thought? Well, Neil Oliver says don't count on it. Sterling's finest is tonight's outsider at 9:45. As her fundraiser tops an incredible £6 million, just how many lives could the incredible cancer campaigner Dame Deborah James be responsible for saving? Positive Professor Carol Sikora, one of the world's leading authorities on cancer, analyses the public health impact of Bell Babe's incredible story at 9:30. Plus, after Sam Ryder ended 24 years of Eurovision humiliation with his second place finish, should the UK offer to host next year's contest for war-torn winners Ukraine and take on the close to £30 million bill that comes with it? We'll debate that and more in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Don't forget, you can get your first look at tomorrow's newspapers throughout the night too. And after being booed at the FA Cup final, could Prince William be crowned one of tonight's greatest Britons as a consolation prize? The first GBUJ Coronation of the Week closes out the show just before 11. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. The Queen lifted the spirits of the nation and raised Republican Kevin Maguire's blood pressure even further with a dazzling display at last night's Royal Windsor Horse Show Gala, the first major event of Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee. Now, we were worried. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was very concerned when our phenomenal 96-year-old monarch pulled out of the state opening of Parliament for the first time in 59 years, with Buckingham Palace blaming mobility issues. But showing just how much this Jubilee means to the Queen, she was back to her old self last night, even walking confidently from her vehicle to her seat. And isn't that just beautiful to watch?
Here, we'd like to very humbly thank you for choosing us over the state opening of Parliament. You did the right thing.
For 70 years, there's been one constant heartbeat of this nation, and that heart belongs to Her Majesty the Queen.
I therefore speak on behalf of a grateful nation and Commonwealth when I give you our sincere and most loving thanks.
Hip hip! The parade will replace her dress! Replace!
And all is all right in the world again. Long may she reign. And what a couple of weeks we have ahead of us. Now, we've got a brand new superstar panellist tonight. Big welcome to former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. And she's alongside our old favourites, nothing old about her though, media personality and writer Christine Hamilton. See what I did there, Christine? And senior reporter for the newspaper, Benjamin Butterworth. He's just back from Eurovision. But before all of that, the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says he doesn't want to scrap, but rather reform the Northern Ireland Protocol. He's been in Belfast today, holding emergency talks with the country's leaders. The Democratic Unionist Party is refusing to form a devolved government until the UK takes action over the border in the Irish Sea. Sinn Féin's President, Mary Lou McDonald, has accused the government of placating the DUP, but Boris Johnson says he's urged them to cooperate.
You need leadership and you need government. So you bet. I said to the DUP in particular, we want to see you back in the executive. We want to see you nominating. We want to see a speaker in the assembly. Of course. Now, the issue they have is that they object to the operation of the protocol. We don't want to scrap it, but we think it can be fixed. And actually, 5 of the 5 parties I talked to today also think it needs reform.
Around a dozen buses have been spotted carrying Ukrainian servicemen leaving the besieged Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol. It's not yet known how many were aboard or if wounded soldiers were among those who left. Some 600 servicemen are said to have been sheltering inside the plant. Earlier, the regiment said it would follow orders from Ukraine's Supreme Military Command to save the lives of troops, an apparent indication that the long siege was coming to an end. The Swedish government has announced it will apply for NATO membership. Finland made a similar announcement yesterday as both countries re-evaluate their security status as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russia's president has warned that expanding military infrastructure in the Nordic countries would provoke a response. Sweden's Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson says the best option for her country's security is to join NATO together with Finland.
If Sweden joins NATO, the threshold for military conflicts would increase and have a deterrent effect in Northern Europe. This would especially be the case if Sweden and Finland joined NATO together. As a NATO member, Sweden would not only strengthen its own security, but also contribute to enhanced security in the Baltic Sea region and for NATO as a whole.
A 22-year-old man has been found guilty of the murder of police community support officer Julia James. Callum Wheeler beat to death the mother of 2 as she walked her dog in fields near the back of her home in Snowdown in Kent. A jury at Canterbury Crown Court took less than 70 minutes to find him guilty of Mrs James's murder. The Prime Minister has commended the bravery and courage of Blackpool football player Jake Daniels, who has come out publicly as gay. The 17-year-old forward says he made the decision after feeling that he'd proved himself as a professional player. The Professional Footballers Association says it's extremely proud of him. He's the first male professional footballer to come out in the UK since Justin Fashanu in 1990. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Outside of the Chinese Communist Party itself, or the World Economic Forum and its little COVID dictators like Trudeau and Ardern, I don't think there's an international organisation in the world I trust less than the World Health Organization to manage future international pandemic policy. Let's just be straight for a moment. As I've been saying since April 2020, the WHO, with Dr. Tedros at the helm as Director General, aided and abetted the Chinese government in covering up the origins of the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, with truly devastating consequences for the world. It praised China for transparency at a time the state was killing whistleblowers and claiming human-to-human transmission of the virus was impossible. There's been no consequence for China, the rogue state for whom the WHO seems to do its bidding. Still no honest investigation, still no answers, still no reckoning. Donald Trump was the only world leader prepared to stand up to this dangerous international organisation, withdrawing funding for the WHO. But now we're all meant to nod along blindly, as if the WHO has our best interests at heart. Like hell they do. That's why I am deeply angry and even more concerned about a so-called World Health Organization pandemic accord to be discussed when the body meets this Sunday for the World Health Assembly. The accord is expected to increase the power of the WHO in the pandemic response by individual states. And we know what that means. More lockdowns, more masks, more jabs, and less freedom. And where are our politicians? Only one I can find, only one. The heroic Steve Baker has actually raised any questions about the WHO's pandemic accord. He wrote, I just tabled a written question to Sajid Javid asking for both a written and an oral statement on the UK's negotiating position in relation to the proposed international agreement on pandemic prevention, preparedness and response under the auspices of the WHO. He added, as I have said time and again, lockdown powers need reform. There can be no question of signing up to a treaty which hands those powers to an unaccountable international body, and I would be amazed if Boris Johnson and Sajid Javid intended to do so. Well, we need to find out. So where's all the TV and newspaper coverage of this? Well, the mainstream media too is in lockstep with the WHO and Bill Gates over the correct approach to pandemic management, even though both the organisation and the man got it all spectacularly wrong. Gates is out at the moment promoting his book, How to Prevent the Next Pandemic. According to one uncharitable reviewer, quoted by Matt Ridley, writing in the Daily Telegraph, the book's main message is, quote, that we can prevent the next pandemic by doing all of the things that did not stop the last pandemic event, only more faster and harder. But just look at the way CNN's Anderson Cooper engages with Gates over his nonsensical plan to vaccinate the world every 6 months, regardless of natural infection.
Had 2 vaccinations and then 2 booster shots, is that right?
That's right. And, for people over, 50 or 60, they'll probably have to be boosted every 6 months until we get even better vaccines.
So I've been trying to figure this out for myself. I assume you know the answer to this, so I'll just ask you. When do you get boosted again? I mean, now that you've had it, I've had it around the same time. I've only gotten 3 shots total, only been boosted once. I guess we have immunity for a little while, but when do you decide to get boosted again?
So an infection where you'll get a high viral load would be like vaccination. But, to be safe, every 6 months, you're probably going to be vaccinated. As we get more data, they might even make that shorter for people who are, say 60 or over 70, where the duration seems to be a bit lower. So we're in for ongoing vaccination to stay absolutely safe.
Why do we keep listening to this dude as if he's the oracle? Bill Gates has proven himself to be not very smart during this pandemic at all. Watch.
It wasn't until early February when I was in a meeting that experts at the foundation said, there's no way, there's been too much travel without diagnosis for us to contain this. And then at that point, we didn't really understand the fatality rate. We didn't understand that it's a fairly low fatality rate and that it's a disease mainly of the elderly, kind of like flu is, although a bit different than that. So that was a pretty scary period, right, where the world didn't go on alert, including the United States, nearly as fast as it needed to.
What is he talking about? Anyone looking at the data and avoiding the hysteria knew exactly who was most vulnerable to COVID. If Bill Gates and the World Health Organization are allowed to take control of international pandemic policy, mark my words, we're in deep trouble. Neither accept the failure of lockdowns and jabs in preventing infections. Neither talk about the devastating economic firestorm and wave of deaths coming thanks to 2 years of lockdowns. And neither stand up to China for either the lab leak lies or the zero COVID disaster. To respond now, my superstar panel, the media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and here for the first time tonight, former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda DeLucy. Christine Hamilton, why on earth would we give the World Health Organization any more power when they absolutely blew it over the course of this pandemic?
Absolutely no reason whatsoever. It's all part of Bill Gates' master plan to rule the world. And as you said, the WHO ignored the early warnings, when the COVID pandemic was just beginning. They I think they came from Taiwan. They completely ignored that. And then they praised
believed
the Chinese,
China,
I think you said, for transparency. When the Chinese were, I don't know what's happened to the whistleblower, probably still in prison. The Chinese were imprisoning people like that. And never forget that in 2014, when the Ebola outbreak was happening, the WHO resisted calls from the doctors who knew what they were doing, and they didn't want to offend any of their member governments, apparently. So their track record is absolutely abysmal. And no, certainly not. Why should we give any more power to, frankly, to China, never mind to Bill Gates? We did very well, thank you, ploughing our own canoe. That's a very bad metaphor, ploughing our own canoe during COVID. So I do not want the WHO, you know what I mean, interfering.
But Belinda Lucy, why is no one even questioning this? No one's even talking about potentially giving the WHO these unprecedented powers.
Well, thank goodness for you, Dan, for starters, because this platform is incredible and very, very precious to the British public at the moment. You know, supranational governance that power grabs democratic agency from ordinary folk over their ordinary everyday lives, especially their bodily autonomy, is dangerous. And it is not a recipe for peace. You know, I banged this drum during the Brexit years as well because the EU kept power grabbing more and more. Because if you think this is the end of it, it's not. We have to draw a red line now, and Boris needs to be very clear about our negotiating position, because Bill Gates seems to have more of a god complex at the moment than like Bono and Tony Blair put together, and that whole, it's just terrifying. You know, when I see him on telly, my toes curl. I'm like, come out in a hot sweat because I don't trust them, and I don't feel like they mean well by the ordinary people. They're like those who wanted only those who went to university to have the vote. You know, they know better, and they're going to tell the little people how to run their lives. We have to say no and draw the line. We're a sovereign country. We've got to govern ourselves.
Benjamin Butterworth, do you have concerns about this World Health Organization pandemic accord?
I mean, the one thing that's clearly right is that they didn't stand up to China. And that's how it happened to spread so fast in the first place. The first doctor who talks about COVID isn't in prison, he's dead, you know, because he died of COVID shortly afterwards. Now, look, I think that, you know, countries like Britain, like the US, having more interest and more sway in the World Health Organization would be beneficial, because that would stop countries like China, which are abusive by nature, by their lack of democracy, from abusing an organization like the World Health Organization. And, you know, you say that Bill Gates has a mastermind to take, you know, master plan to take over the world. I don't think he needs that. You know, he's been pretty much the richest person for decades. He was advising about how to deal with pandemics 20 years ago.
What does he know about that?
Well, we know that he has a lot of insight to this stuff. He's doing huge help in Africa and third world countries. Well, you can look back to clips 15 years ago when he talked about why countries should be having funds like they do for nuclear powers and Trident for something like a pandemic, because it's far more likely to destroy the world. And that's what we saw in the last 3 years.
Do you agree with him that even people who have been quadruple jabbed are still going to have to be jabbed every 6 months, even if they've had COVID over that period? Do you agree with that?
I totally agree that people should be able to keep getting the COVID vaccines. You know, every year...
So you keep doing it every 6 months?
Well, it won't be possible, but if it were, I probably would consider it. You know, as a 30-year-old, it's not particularly useful, but I think a lot of people...
So why do it?
Why bother?
Because...
What's it about? Is it about virtue signaling?
No, it's not. But as I was going to finish, you know, people who are older or have a particular vulnerability, they are going to want to get this just like they get the flu vaccine. And who are you to say that people shouldn't be able to get their vaccines every 6 or 12 months?
We can decide that for ourselves. We don't need the WHO telling us that that's what we're going to do.
But what you do want is some of the world's best scientists getting together and making that advice. And that's why I think it's a good idea. And we shouldn't be afraid of the World Health Organization. They've had a lot of good advice.
They have, but why are they so opaque? They're so opaque. How did the Director General get his position? Because China pushed him into it.
Belinda, I think we should be very afraid of them, actually, and this soft power, which they're using in all sorts of terrifying ways.
And also, is our Parliament really going to reject advice? Say it's just advice, for example, because these apparently are proposals and amendments rather than a new treaty. But I don't really trust our Parliament, having seen its history of being burned by the Lisbon Treaty and all sorts of things they sign in dark corridors. I don't really trust them not to outsource our sovereignty anymore, because they've done it before. So it's a question of whether we trust our parliaments to stop the WHO forcing things upon us.
What I would like to see the WHO doing now is instituting an investigation into the Chinese virology.
Yeah, why aren't they doing that?
But they're barely talking about that, Christine. They're paying lip service to that. And by the way, I don't trust them for one moment, because any time they get into China, they don't do anything that the Chinese Communist Party doesn't want them to do.
But why does that not prove that countries like Britain should be getting more involved in WHO, should support things like
because we can't we already fund it. I mean, the US is the biggest funder.
Yeah.
We're one of the biggest funders. It's made no difference. Personally, Benjamin, and this will make your skin crawl, I would say we should defund the WHO, just like we should defund the BBC, and then we would be in a much stronger position.
Look, the only thing I want my skin crawling with is the COVID vaccine.
Oh, no!
That's pathetic.
No, my
You
God.
don't believe in science, do you?
I do believe in science, and that's why we're all sat here not 2 metres apart, because the vaccine opened the world up, and Bill Gates was right.
Did the COVID vaccine stop transmission, Benjamin?
Well, we know it cuts transmission.
Did it stop transmission?
No, and no one ever claimed it did, but it
Yes,
does. It stops an awful lot of people dying or getting sick, and I think that's a pretty good deal.
The vast majority of people I know got Omicron within days of having the third jab. But look, we'll continue these discussions. Christine Hamilton, Benjamin Butterworth, Belinda DeLucy, my superstar panel, are here all night. But also coming up, with the newly honoured Dame Deborah James raising a staggering £6 million for a cancer campaign, one of the world's leading authorities on the disease. Professor Carol Sikora joins me at 9:30 to discuss the incredible impact of the Bell Babes story. He knows her personally too. But up next, after a Margaret Thatcher statue is targeted by vandals within hours of being unveiled in her hometown of Grantham, should the tribute be moved to Westminster? Political activist Kate Smurthwaite says no, 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 and her opinion's not returning. But comedy legend Jim Davidson and former Tory Minister Edwina Currie will do their best in the clash. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk, with your opinion on this. Tweet me at GBNews. We have our poll running there too. The results revealed after the break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Our positive Professor Carol Sikora and Neil Oliver coming up. But time now for The Clash. And she was one of the most formidable and controversial figures in UK history. But does our first ever female Prime Minister, the Iron Lady, really deserve this? Within hours of Baroness Margaret Thatcher's highly contested statue being lowered into Grantham yesterday after 2 years of delays, it was allegedly pelted with eggs by 59-year-old yob Jeremy Webster. The petty vandal, who was the deputy director of the University of Leicester's Attenborough Arts Centre, dubbed himself the egg thrower online after reportedly putting out a call to arms for more acts of disrespect towards the £300,000 monument. Vetoed from its original planned site at Westminster amid fears of civil disobedience and vandalism, the embattled statue was instead offered to Baroness Thatcher's hometown in Lincolnshire, where it now stands on a 10-foot-high plinth for its protection. But with the lack of diversity among monuments in Parliament Square, something campaigners have long been raising, should the Margaret Thatcher statue actually be moved there so it can take pride of place at Westminster? Let me know your thoughts by emailing dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me at GBNews. We've got our poll running there too. But weighing in on this now, welcome to the comedy legend Jim Davidson, the political activist Kate Smurthwaite, and the former Conservative Minister Edwina Currie. Edwina, it seems absolutely mad to me that this statue is in Grantham and not in Westminster.
I absolutely agree. I don't like the statue. I have to say it looks like she's wearing a dressing gown. And I think the greatest indignity was putting it on the plinth by having a rope around her neck, which is going to be one of the key images that we see from there onwards.
It was horrible. That was just awful, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, to be fair, there is one of Margaret in Westminster, and there's also a picture of it in my downstairs bathroom, and I say hello to her several times a day. And it's a lovely one because it's got her finger wagging, which is great. She's doing that to all the MPs as they go into the House of Commons and saying, don't you misbehave or whatever. But yes, when you actually walk round London, central London, Dan, what you become aware of is there are a lot of statues, but they're mostly blokes. They're mostly from the 19th century. They're mostly soldiers. They're mostly on horses, and nobody's ever heard of them. They probably hadn't been heard of even at the time that the statue went up. There are very few statues of women. And if we are going to put up more statues of women, then I think we should start with Margaret. And it would be absolutely great to have her outside the House of Commons lecturing everybody.
Kate Smurthwaite, you're a big-time feminist. Presumably, you want our first female Prime Minister pride of place at Westminster too, right?
Well, I'm a big human rights activist, Dan, as you know, and so I think that we should move the statue to Grantham and put it where it rightly belongs, which is at the bottom of the Thames. This is the woman who brought in Section 28, some of the most disgusting setbacks to the rights of gay and lesbian people around the UK. This is the person who privatised the utilities, which is exactly why we now have a cost of living crisis where energy prices are going through the roof and energy companies are private companies. They're making an absolute fortune and we're not building a nationalised energy grid. This is somebody who, you know, saw the sell-off of council housing. That means we've now got a shortage of social housing around the country. This is somebody who had ongoing attacks on our benefit system. I would love to see more statues of women around the country. I couldn't agree with Edwina more that there are way too many statues of, you know, military leaders and lots of men. And what we should do is put up statues of the brilliant women who have done brilliant things to support their fellow humans around the country. And obviously, Margaret Thatcher is not one of them. She's the exact opposite of that. Like, does nothing for me as a woman to see a statue of somebody who, you know, despite making such progress herself, did absolutely nothing for women's rights.
Jim Davidson. So Kate Smurthwaite says she wants Thatcher at the bottom of the Thames. Your response?
As long as she swims down there with it to put it there. I think that would sort me out, really. Yeah, well, it's absolute nutters about, aren't they? This was one of the greatest prime ministers we've ever had. And because that lady there, whatever her name is, didn't agree with that, she's got to be thrown to the bottom of the... Why don't we pull all the statues down, get a big ladder and take Nelson down as well? And we'll just put up women and people that are nice to people. This is our history. These people are great people. Why shouldn't Margaret Thatcher be next to the great Winston Churchill and the equally great Nelson Mandela? Tell me that. This is crazy.
Kate?
This is madness. The world's gone
I think
woke
to
and
equate
bonkers.
Margaret Thatcher with Nelson Mandela is disgusting. You know, somebody who campaigned for equality. And I mean, Margaret Thatcher... She didn't stand up to apartheid in quite the way that one might have hoped. She wasn't actually on the same side as Nelson Mandela. when he was in Robben Island, when he was in prison fighting for his basic human rights. We can't put those two into the same bracket. Of course, we should go round and look at whose statues are up there. And I think it's brilliant that we've already taken action to get rid of some of the horrendous slave owners and really horrific statues that we've got up there. And we should be challenging what's going on and putting up statues.
You don't want anyone to be celebrated whose political views you don't agree with.
But it's not a question of whose political views I don't agree with. Who was responsible for people's human rights being taken away, for people's lives being made harder, for some of the crisis that we're still living through, for gay and lesbian people?
Edwina, do you want to respond to some of that attack on Thatcher?
Yeah, all I can hear is bile against a Conservative Prime Minister. I don't hear any respect or any recognition.
No, I've got no respect for her.
No, Hannah, you had your go. It's somebody else's
It's called the
go
clash,
now.
Edwina. You're going to have to deal with the fact that sometimes I talk at the same time as you. I expect you experienced it in the Commons.
No. One of the things you don't do is you don't talk at the same time as me, because actually I've been at it a lot longer than you have, and I'm better at it than you are.
You're still wrong, though. You're still not on the side of truth and justice. So it doesn't matter how long you've been fighting for people to have a worse life. It doesn't make you a better person for it. I don't mind who is the better debater. I don't mind who is the politer. I am on the side of human rights, truth and justice. And, yeah, I'm absolutely happy with that.
If you are really that keen... Dan, give me the microphone just for a minute. If she's really that keen on equality and all the rest of it, why doesn't she have a go at the Labour Party that have never managed to elect a woman as leader?
I haven't come on here as a member of the Labour Party or a particular supporter of the Labour Party. It's just that weird thing that if you criticise a Conservative politician, they're like, well, you must be in favour of everybody else. I have all sorts of criticisms of other parties, but that's not going to deal with the issue in hand. And the issue in hand is, should we have a statue up of somebody who supported the disgusting Section 28 legislation that pushed gay and lesbian rights in this country?
Jim Davidson, you come in. Jim, come in.
Right. Can I just say something? My TV station has just recorded all the big stars of the Falklands War, the real heroes of this country. And each one of those task force people should have their own statue. They all idolise Mrs. Thatcher. They fought a war, right, led by Mrs. Thatcher. They all idolised her. You can see it on my TV station. So come and try and pull that down. I'll give you the address.
If we're going to celebrate people who kill people...
She's loved by many people, but just not you. That doesn't make you right and everyone else wrong. And Edwina, you must be really fed up.
It's a coincidence, then.
People throwing your eggs. If you remember all that.
We don't talk about Edwina and eggs, Jim. That's still a sensitive subject.
Well, at least I was on the right side with that as well. I mean, I think it is offensive to be claiming to be a supporter of equal rights and wanting to see more women recognised and so on, and then not having a go at those political parties. There is actually only one in the United Kingdom that still has never elected a woman, despite having as leader, despite having numerous and repeated opportunities. So have a go.
This is ridiculous. This is not what the debate is about. If you want to have a debate about whether the Labour Party should have a female leader, you get me in and I absolutely will support that. But I think it should not just be a female leader, but it should be someone who actually supports women's rights, LGBT rights, who supports human rights, who supports asylum seekers.
Kate Smurthwaite, what I'm seeing a lot of at the moment...
abusing things that this Conservative Party has been doing for decades and decades.
Listen up, Kate. I've got something to say. What I'm seeing at the moment, Kate, is a lot of intolerance from the left. You only want to celebrate people. You only want people to exist. Who you agree with?
Dan, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I am massively, massively intolerant of racists, sexists, homophobes, bigots, everybody who is out there making people's lives worse. I am absolutely intolerant of those who allowed thousands to die unnecessarily in the pandemic. I am intolerant of those who pushed ahead with austerity measures that have killed hundreds of thousands of people. I am intolerant of those who continue to let the most vulnerable people in our society suffer because of the cost of living crisis and do nothing about it while the wealthy make more and more money. Yes, Stan. Yes. I am wholly intolerant of those people and proud to be so.
Oh, she's just a finger-wagging idiot. How about
Oh,
Russia?
a minute ago, Margaret Thatcher was a hero for wagging her fingers. But guess what? All of a sudden, if I do it on the side of truth and justice, I'm the Wicked Witch of the West. Well, hand me my broomstick. I'm so proud to be here on the side of truth and justice.
Anybody else, you're just like so many people. Your opinion is one that shouldn't be argued with. Well, everybody knows it's my opinion that shouldn't be argued with, and Dan's and Edwina's. Get a life. She's the Prime Minister. I'd put one about
She's
Wilson
not
up.
actually the Prime Minister anymore. You're a couple of decades and a bit out of
what
date
about
in
Theresa
a lot of
May?
ways, to be
Kate,
honest.
what about Theresa May? Would you be happy for there to be a statue of Theresa May, another female Prime Minister, or are you going to find a reason to say that she shouldn't be celebrated too?
I think that her treatment of asylum seekers was absolutely disgusting and it led to people's deaths, didn't it? So, no thanks. I've got, you want me to bring you a list of people whose statues should be put up. I've got a great big list, Dan. I've got all sorts of wonderful people. Human rights campaigners. Let's put up a statue of, people who've run successful campaigns to actually support human rights around the UK. Wouldn't that be brilliant? Get rid of some of the military personnel up there and put up statues of people who really
Here's
deserve
some of the ones people want
celebrating.
pulled down. Nelson, Earl Mountbatten and Christopher Columbus. What's he done? Christopher Columbus.
Christopher
He discovered
Columbus.
America.
Gandhi, they want Gandhi torn down too.
Americans, what has he done? You genuinely
Edwina,
don't know.
come in.
Like, wow, mind
Edwina,
blown.
come in here.
What has Christopher Columbus done?
What this noisy Harridan wants is people
That's
who are
very
campaigning.
sexist language. I thought you
What
were
I
a
would
supporter
like to
of
see-
women's rights, Edwina.
Oh, do shut up, you silly woman. What I
Great,
would
yeah.
like to
You're
see
making
is
yourself
some
look like the hero here.
Politics and the people in government are those who actually take the decisions and actually bring the changes, like the improvements in human rights, like the improvement in living standards.
No, but she pushed gay rights back with Section 28. That's my point.
That we should recognise, and those are the people that we should honour, not just the people who make the
Kate
noise
Smurthwaite,
on
I'm
television.
sure you accept that all historical figures need to be looked at on the whole. They have good points, they have bad points.
Yeah.
Can you say anything positive about Margaret Thatcher?
Oh, she had nice hair and a nice voice. I mean, it was exciting that we had a woman in charge of the country. And I mean, I'm not old enough to remember when she first came to power, but it must have felt very empowering for women to think, oh, gosh, there's a woman who's running the country. And they must have thought, I really hope she takes steps to improve the lot of women in the UK. And sadly, she didn't do that. Sadly, once she was there, she did very, very little for women's rights. And in fact, then pushed back on gay rights and pushed back on all sorts of issues. And
Kate, I think
so
what you're
hard
probably overlooking
against working
is
class people around
just
the UK.
by being there,
No?
she did so much for women's rights.
But
That is
she
the
did more
political
than that.
activist.
But she did more than that.
She must have been
During
very
those
inspiring,
years-
and we should have
during
women in.
those years,
Edwina,
if we
final
may.
word to you.
Yeah, just during those years, if we may, we made huge improvements in other areas. I mean, for example, I was a health minister. We brought in breast cancer screening for women nationwide, and that saved many thousands of lives. We brought in cervical cancer screening for women. We were the first country in the world to have both those screening programs for the health of women.
And now the
First time
Conservative
in the
government
world, and it
is
was done under Margaret
absolutely
Thatcher.
mind-bogglingly destroying
Thank you
the
so
NHS.
much, all.
And all of that stuff is going up in smoke.
Thank
so
you. That is
I hope you're fighting
the
against that just as
political
hard as I am.
activist Kate Smurthwaite, the comedy legend Jim Davidson, and the former Tory minister Edwina Currie. So who do you agree with on this? Well, from Laura on Twitter, they should make a second Thatcher statue and put it in Parliament Square and keep the other one in Grantham. I like that. Double Thatcher statue. Good idea. From Clive on Twitter, it should never have been put up in the first place. And Sean says, of course it should be moved to Westminster. She was Prime Minister for a good number of years and moved British politics on during her premiership as well. And your verdict is now in. 77% of you agree that the Thatcher statue should be relocated to Westminster. 23% of you oppose the move. Now, hot on the heels of Sadiq Khan's cannabis trip, Nicola Sturgeon has gone on a stateside jolly too. But will being called out as a, quote, political opportunist on the world stage give the independence-obsessed leader pause for thought? Neil Oliver will give his take in The Outsider at 9:45. But first, how many lives could Dame Deborah James save after her brave cancer battle hits the front pages and raises over £6 million for charity? Positive Professor Carol Sikora, one of the world's leading authorities on cancer, who knew Deborah personally, joins me straight after the break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Neil Oliver and Toby Young still to come, but first it's time for our positive professor, Carol Sikora. In just a week since revealing she's been moved to hospice care after a 5-year battle with bowel cancer, Deborah James has raised £6 million for charity and personally been made a dame by Prince William. The inspirational campaigner launched her Bowel Babe fundraiser last week after making a tragic announcement that captured the nation's hearts, and within just 24 hours, she raised £1.5 million for Cancer Research UK in the fight against the evil illness. This was her emotional reaction.
I've literally just found out, as you were here, that in less than 24 hours, it's just gone over £1 million, which is like, I had a figure in my mind of about £250,000 because I thought that would be enough to fund a couple of projects. It makes me feel utterly loved, but it makes me feel like we're all kind of in it at the end together, and we all want to make a difference and say, you know what, screw you, cancer.
Her tireless efforts were noticed far and wide, with the Duke of Cambridge turning up at her family home on Friday to personally deliver a damehood. Taking to social media to share her excitement, Deborah admitted that she's getting weaker and more tired, but she's finding so much to smile about in the sadness. I have been touched by the brutal honesty, intense compassion and wicked humour of Deborah, who has shared every up and down of her bowel cancer battle. Carol Sikora is, of course, one of the world's foremost authorities on cancer and met personally with Deborah at points during her battle with this disease. Carol joins me now. Carol, it's the Deborah effect. That's what we're calling it. She's going to save lives, isn't she? She's going to save many, many lives.
She is, and it's not the money that per se, it's the fact that she's drawing attention to a type of cancer which, if picked up early, has a success rate for cure of over 90%. But if picked up later, it's much less. So what she's done, she's a live wire, she's exciting, she's dynamic. Even now, even though she's in a hospice and having palliative care, she's very dynamic, and she's changing the way people perceive cancer. You can't make it happy to have cancer, but if you pick it up early, you can do so much better. And what she's done is raise the awareness of one type of cancer, which is are very common, or there are 4 very common cancers: breast, lung, prostate and colon, including the rectum. And she's raising the awareness of the latter, colon and rectal cancer, which is fantastic.
Carol, you spent time personally with Deborah. You know her. What sort of person is she like?
She's a live wire. She's really lively, positive. I mean, to live with cancer for 5 years, this is her dancing in our linear accelerator at Reading with a patient that had just had radiotherapy. These women are crazy. This was filmed by the BBC. They bottled out of showing it on Panorama for some reason. They thought it was too light-hearted. But you've got to take cancer like that. It's part of life. And what Deborah's showing there is how she's living with cancer. And that's the way we want things to go.
Indeed. And Carol, she wants people to talk about bowel cancer in particular, because it's something we sometimes avoid, don't we, given it involves bodily functions?
You know, what's been impressive with the NHS over the last 5 years is the adverts about if there's blood in the poo. I mean, you know, when you first see that, when I was a medical student, you never taught language like that. And just the adverts from the NHS saying, if there's blood in the poo, do something about it. And it's really a wake-up call. Blood in the poo, difficulty in passing stools, having problems with dilation of the abdomen, swelling and noises in the tummy. Do something. Persist, even if you can't get an appointment to your GP, persist somehow to go through and get it sorted out. And that's what she's done. Raising the money is one thing, and that's just fantastic for cancer research. But the more important thing is raising the awareness of a disease that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about bowel cancer. Just like prostate cancer, no one wants to talk about it. Breast cancer and lung cancer are more acceptable to talk about. So I think what Deborah's done is just fantastic.
And she has changed that. She has changed that. She is a wonderful woman. We send her all our love as she goes through what is just unimaginable with so much strength. But crucially, Carol, as you say, her trademark wicked sense of humour. Carol Sikora, our positive professor. Thank you so much, Carol. Coming up, as it turns out, Durham police have been handing out retrospective COVID fines. Will the Bears with Keir saga finish his leadership? My superstar panel return to discuss a Labour Party in crisis. That's in the media buzz. After 10, we'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages then too. But first, as Nicola Sturgeon is branded a political opportunist for taking her independence obsession stateside, will the scathing criticism she's received give the First Minister pause for thought? Well, Neil Oliver sure ain't holding his breath. He's here next.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming up just after the top of the hour. But first, Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. And hot on the heels of failed London Mayor Sadiq Khan's jolly across America to learn about cannabis, another of the UK's biggest political egos, Nicola Sturgeon, has gone stateside this week. And as part of the First Minister's grandstanding tour promoting her independence ploy, Sturgeon appeared earlier tonight at the prestigious Washington think tank, the Brookings Institute, where she gave a woke speech about Scotland's role in tackling the global climate crisis.
There is an overwhelming scientific consensus that this will be catastrophic. In the words of the UN Secretary-General, a 2-degree rise will create a hellscape on Earth. Equally clear is the consensus that to avoid this hellscape and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, global emissions must be halved by the end of this decade.
But unfortunately for scheming Sturgeon, key members of her audience have zero interest in the SNP's dodgy pursuit of a second referendum, with one expert accusing her of harming the Nato alliance with her visits. This is Michael O'Hanlon, Director of Research and Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institute, who told the Herald on Sunday, it just feels a weird moment to push this, with much bigger issues dominating the news and the schedules of policymakers. If Scots push this now, it feels like they are somehow being political opportunists in a slightly unfriendly way to the broader NATO good. To me, it feels wrong in the timing. NATO does not have the bandwidth for this issue, and now it might appear to weaken the alliance at a time when we need to project strength and resolve. So, Neil Oliver, this looks like a terrible start for Sturgeon's big US jaunt. How do you reckon her trip's going to go down where you are in Scotland?
I think she's increasingly irrelevant, I would say, for the majority of Scottish people. Her incessant calls for an independence referendum, a second referendum, increasingly fall on deaf ears. In the recent local elections, the SNP got something. The turnout in Scotland was less than 40%. Of that, the SNP got less than 40%. So that something like 18% maybe of the Scottish electorate voted for her. And of that small percentage, only some of those that vote SNP actually want independence. So her calls for that are increasingly, she's pleading to an increasingly small number of people. But I would say more widely than that, it's indicative of it's that old wisdom about people who cannot fix their own problems, who cannot deal with their own shortcomings. They seek to distract from that by going out and promising to fix the wider world. People that can't make their own bed or wash their own dishes, they leave all that mess behind them and shut the door on it, pretend it's not there, and go out and pontificate to others about what should be done to fix the world. She's a classic case of that. The SNP under Nicola Sturgeon, they can't do anything. These are people that are ineffectual, that are incompetent. Under Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland has gone from a position where we were once widely regarded, as a nation, as a population, as a culture with so much to offer, and we have been so diminished under the years of SNP dominance. It's everything you want to think of: infrastructure, the state of the NHS, the state of hospitals that she's promised to build and hasn't been able to deliver. The £250 million ferries contract that's look. She was advised at the time that it was, that there were legal problems with it. She went ahead. Those 2 ferries are going to be scrapped almost certainly. They'll never sail. Drugs deaths, the fact that people in the East End of Glasgow have the same life expectancy as people in sub-Saharan Africa. education that used to be world class, and now we're so bad that it's been deemed better just to take Scottish schools off of national and international league tables because it's too embarrassing to be compared there. And yet, despite all of those problems at home, the problems that she is paid to deal with, she's off swanning about in America trying to distract from the fact that she cannot do anything. Her SNP are a disastrous problem for Scotland. Scotland is failing under the SNP. And there she is out in, across on the other side of the Atlantic, distracting from that by pontificating. It's fascinating to remember that she's in a country where the Union of the United States is indissoluble. If the governor of Arizona or California was to come to London and talk about and talk about seeking independence, then the federal government in the United States would pay attention to what that governor was saying, because of the illegality of seeking to remove one state from the Union. It's illegal in the United States. And yet, here we are, and we have a First Minister of Scotland who's out there doing her damnedest to raise the spectre of yet another independence referendum.
And it doesn't look like she's going to have much sympathy there, Neil.
Well, I don't know. I mean, she is an effective politician.
Well, she's a globalist, isn't she? We know that.
And she's a globalist. She is successful at selling herself. At pushing herself as a figure. That is what she is skilled at. But the point is, she is not skilled at anything else. When it comes to properly looking after a country, Scotland has its needs. The Scottish people are a population that we have problems here at home. There are things that need addressed, and the fact that Nicola Sturgeon's SNP are completely incapable of dealing with those problems, she knows that. She is incapable. She is incompetent. Her party are incapable and incompetent, and all she does is try to distract attention from that. She exists, her party exists to pursue a single objective, which is independence. She can't deliver it. It's never going to happen. But she's trapped on the hamster wheel. She has to keep on promising it. She has to keep on throwing red meat to her base. And so she's going to be out there in the United States pontificating about an independence that only a fraction of the Scottish population want. And for as long as she is there, for as long as the SNP dominates in Scotland, it is always to the disastrous suffering of the better part of the population of Scotland.
Searing analysis, as ever, from our Neil Oliver. Neil, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, with Saving the Union, the latest pressing issue facing Boris Johnson, who today raced to Northern Ireland. Are the Conservatives in need of a total restart to tackle some of the biggest problems that have ever faced Britain? Well, Tory grandee and former Brexit Secretary David Davis sure thinks so. He'll give his advice on what his party should do. That's next at 10:20. But Labour is in real crisis tonight over the Beers with Care investigation. As it turns out, Durham police have been handing out retrospective fines. Next, I'll be discussing if there's any hope left for summer with my superstar panel, the media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and making her debut, former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. As J.K. Rowling leads the messages of support at a feminist rally marred by aggression from trans activists.
Get your hands up! Get your hands up! You're grabbing my hands.
How can the Be Kind left still claim to be the good guys after dressing in balaclavas to intimidate women? Free Speech Union founder Toby Young analyses why trans people's self-appointed allies may be doing the most damage to their cause. That's uncancelled at 10:40. After Sam Ryder's heroics, Eurovision fever has gripped the nation. But should the UK offer to host next year's contest, which, by the way, comes with a price tag of close to £30 million during a cost of living crisis? And does Melania Trump want a dramatic second term as First Lady?
it was a privilege to live there.
And maybe it'll be your home again?
Never say never.
We'll cover those stories in our Media Buzz at 10:30, and as ever, I'll crown a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass before the night is out too. But before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says he doesn't want to scrap, but rather reform the Northern Ireland Protocol. He's been in Belfast today holding emergency talks with the country's leaders. The Democratic Unionist Party is refusing to form a devolved government until the UK takes action over the border in the Irish Sea. Sinn Féin's President, Mary Lou McDonald, has accused the government of placating the DUP, but Boris Johnson says he's urged them to cooperate.
You need leadership and you need government. So you bet. I said to the DUP in particular, we want to see you back in the executive. We want to see you nominating. We want to see a speaker in the assembly. Of course. Now the issue they have is that they object to the operation of the protocol. We don't want to scrap it, but we think it can be fixed. And actually, 5 of the 5 parties I talked to today also think it needs reform.
Ukrainian servicemen evacuated from the besieged Mariupol steelworks have arrived in the Russian-controlled border town of Novoazovsk. Some were seen being carried off of buses on stretchers. Some 600 servicemen were said to have been sheltering inside the plant, and it's not yet known how many have now left. Earlier, the regiment said it would follow orders to save the lives of troops, an indication that the long siege could be coming to an end. Turkey's president says he will not approve bids by Sweden or Finland to join NATO. It follows announcements by both countries that they will apply. Their governments have re-evaluated their security status as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Earlier, Vladimir Putin warned that expanding military infrastructure in the Nordic countries would provoke a response. Sweden's Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson says the best option for her country's security is to join the military alliance.
If Sweden joins NATO, the threshold for military conflicts would increase and have a deterrent effect in Northern Europe. This would especially be the case if Sweden and Finland joined NATO together. As a NATO member, Sweden would not only strengthen its own security, but also contribute to enhanced security in the Baltic Sea region and for NATO as a whole.
A 22-year-old man has been found guilty of the murder of police community support officer Julia James. Callum Wheeler beat to death the mother of 2 as she walked her dog in fields near the back of her home in Snowdown in Kent. A jury at Canterbury Crown Court took less than 70 minutes to find him guilty of Mrs James's murder. The Prime Minister has commended the bravery and courage of Blackpool football player Jake Daniels, who has come out publicly as gay. The 17-year-old forward says he made the decision after feeling that he'd proved himself as a professional player. The Professional Footballers Association says it's extremely proud of him. He's the first male professional footballer to come out in the UK since Justin Fashanu in 1990. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton.
Time for tomorrow's News Tonight now on our Media Buzz. Just one front page in so far. It is hot off the press. And that news we heard earlier from Tamsin, proud to say I'm gay. The Metro leading on the news that Jake Daniels has become the first male professional footballer in England to come out in 32 years. Now, Daniel is a 17-year-old striker for Blackpool. And he thought he'd have to hide his truth in order to be a pro footballer. But now he wants to break the stigma of homophobia in the game. Justin Fashanu, pictured there, became the first male British professional footballer to come out in 1990 before he tragically took his own life 8 years later at the age of 37. I have to say, I think it's absolutely brilliant
that this young player has done this. Very telling, I think, that he's 17 years old. There's a certain fearlessness of youth. And what I hope is that this will show that sexuality in football doesn't need to be a big issue anymore. My superstar panel back with me now, the media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, senior reporter for the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. Now, I imagine Keir Starmer will be feeling far less optimistic about the investigation into Beargate after it's emerged that Durham police did issue a retrospective fine during the pandemic. Until now, it's been widely claimed that the force's policy was to avoid taking retrospective action over illegal gatherings during lockdown, something many commentators have speculated the Labour leader was counting on while making his oh-so-noble pledge to resign. However, in November 2020, a member of the public, there she is, Vicky Hutchinson, organised a balloon release in memory of her father-in-law, who had died of COVID just days before. Vicky held the service outdoors in a field opposite the church where her father-in-law was buried, and she asked the 30 people in attendance to wear masks and stay socially distanced. But in a truly depressing and sick, actually, reminder of those inhumane lockdown measures, after a retrospective investigation from Durham Police into the event, Vicky was fined £10,000. Then, on April 23rd last year, significantly, just a week before Starmer's booze up, it was reduced to £500 based on her ability to pay. So following this latest revelation, it's perhaps no wonder that the left-wing media are reporting that Shadow Health Secretary and Labour's rising star Wes Streeting is on a secret leadership drive. According to The Observer, a fundraiser event hosted by Streeting in March has sparked rumours that he is readying himself for a leadership election. And elsewhere, the bookies' favourite to replace Starmer, Mayor of Greater Manchester Andy Burnham, was very clear about his ambitions in this interview.
But at some point, would you like to be leader of the Labour Party and change this country?
Well, I have stood twice, and so obviously I think people would think I was not being honest with you if I said I'd never wanted to do it. Of course.
Third time lucky, we would say.
Well, who knows? But, one day I would, I've got a really important job to do here. I am in the middle of a second term and I'm serving a full second term. But if at some point in the future, beyond all of this, it was felt that I could do something to support the party, I would.
They all want his job. Keir Starmer is done for. Christine Hamilton, I'm sorry, I cannot understand how the Durham police could do anything other than issue him with a retrospective fixed penalty notice now, given that poor woman, Vicky Hutchinson, who simply arranged to release a bunch of balloons outside for a dead relative from COVID, was fined £10,000. I'm sorry, he's banged to rights. He needs to receive this fine,
I hope so. I mean, the Tory party desperately hopes that he isn't banged to rights because they certainly don't want somebody better than Starmer, which wouldn't be difficult. The draconian nature of that fine, £10,000, is a reminder of what we were all living under.
Sickening.
Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, thank goodness they have now reduced it. And frankly, if...
But they only reduced it because of her financial circumstances.
Well, no, I know, exactly. But even so, if Starmer is fine, then I think they should jolly well crash it out altogether. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, the whole thing, basically, I can't believe we're still talking about it. It's a farce in a beer mug. It really is. And as in a Gatogate, Beergate, blah, blah, blah. What I find very amusing is that Starmer put himself up on an extremely high horse and he has fallen hideously heavily off it. This is all his fault. He started pointing the finger at Boris. He is the one who said that just because Boris was going to be investigated, he should resign.
Well,
so
and he
on
also
that
said
basis,
Rishi Sunak should go for
exactly.
simply being in a room between meetings when a cake was presented
By
in a Tupperware
mistake.
container. He wanted Rishi to go.
Exactly. And people are saying, oh, it's very courageous for Keir to say, I will resign if I'm fined, isn't this wonderful? Rubbish. It isn't courageous. It's absolutely outrageous because it puts political pressure on the police, which is absolutely unforgivable. And honestly, the country deserves better than this pathetic pantomime. But yes, I think he has now made his situation even more difficult. Hooray!
Well, yeah, I mean, Belinda Lucy, I'm sorry, when you compared the case of Vicky Hutchinson, who ends up with a £10,000 fine, OK, fine, they reduced it to £500 because of her ability to pay, for offering a beautiful outdoor socially distanced memorial for her father-in-law, and you compare that to Starmer downing booze, stuffing his face with curry, with 30 people at an event when he wanted us all cowering out in our homes like pathetic little people. That's what makes me angry. It's the hypocrisy of him.
Well, it's often the sort of privilege of the left now, isn't it? They can behave how they like behind closed doors. Yep. They appoint themselves saints to lecture everyone else. And the general public tend to suffer from very different rules because they're not these sort of canonised people, you know, in opposition at the moment in government. And I feel very much for her. I think all fines anyway should be repaid because the restrictions were so ridiculous.
Yes.
But
I think there should be a total amnesty.
Total amnesty. But, you know, Christine's right. I think the Tories are going to be really enjoying this. He's a wounded animal now, Keir, and they want him to hobble along to the next election because he's damaged goods now. He's damaged goods. They
because
don't want
do you
anyone
think
to.
Streety nor Burnham, who, by the way, clearly want his job, and Lisa Nandy, we know she wants his job. We also know Angela Rayner wants his job. Do you think any of them
But she'll be out. If Starmer's out, she'll be out too. Must be.
That's
Must be.
And the thing I like about Wes, actually, he was highly critical of Jeremy Corbyn, and I think that puts him in really good stead for leadership, because, of course, Keir did, you know, welcomed Jeremy with his open arms.
I mean, Benjamin Butterworth, this must be absolutely devastating for you, because you sat on the sofa for months and months and months, going at Boris constantly and consistently over Partygate, calling on him to resign, saying the Tory party's a mess. Actually, it's your party, the Labour Party, which has proven itself to be the biggest disloyal political mess in Britain.
I mean, it's just nonsense. And you can use your tabloid language to make...
What's nonsense about
to make a curry dinner sound, you know, dramatic as you did. But the truth is, you can't say fairer than Keir Starmer saying, if I'm found to have broken the law with a fine, then I'll go. I think that is a reasonable standard that the public expect, and Boris Johnson should accept it himself. And then as for your other point, you know, Andy Burnham isn't eligible to be leader of the Labour Party because he's not a member of Parliament, so that's simply not possible. Wes Streeting, that fundraiser took place long before the Beergate happened, and it raised £20,000 between two gay MPs. That was to help fundraise their campaign
can I just say, it's
for
not
the LGBT Labour.
It's not the right-wing press putting that out there. That report was in your Bible, The Observer, on Sunday.
I mean, look, nobody reads The Observer, but...
Oh, you heard it here first.
But Benjamin, what about the hypocrisy of it? Can you not see the hypocritical nature of it all? From Keir Starmer's point of view, he used people's grief. He used it as a political tool to beat Boris with, when he knew full well that he'd been out of party.
You know, you can sit here.
It's so disingenuous.
You can sit here as a highly paid TV presenter in London lecturing people, but the truth is, the polls show consistently that people were furious at Boris Johnson's rule breaking. They were furious at the 5 times for which he might get fined. And so it's not hypocrisy for Keir Starmer to say that if they think he broke the rules, he would go. That is honour.
Honour? It's not honour at all. As I said earlier, it is not honour and courageous. It is appalling the way he has dragged the police into this. Apparently he's taken 4 legal opinions. The lawyers themselves are so divided about this. Some say that because the curry was pre-ordered, it means it's OK, and some say because the curry was pre-ordered, it wasn't OK, and because the beer was on tap, blah, blah, blah. The lawyers don't know whether they're coming or going, and I think it's outrageous the way Keir Starmer has really put his fate in the hands of the Durham police chief. Now, what pressure does that put on the police? It's absolutely outrageous.
Well, look, I mean, it's no greater pressure than that which GBNews, the Daily Mail and other outlets put by pressuring them to reopen the investigation.
Can I just say, Benjamin, you are completely and utterly blinkered, because you know that I sat here when we learned of the rule breaking at number 10.
And defended Boris Johnson. You kept saying... you sat there saying we shouldn't be bothered about this stuff.
No, Benjamin, that is a misrepresentation. I was completely and utterly outraged at the rule breaking.
Yeah.
But I didn't believe that it reached the standard of plunging the country into crisis by the Prime Minister resigning.
To be fair, you said that Boris Johnson shouldn't resign, so I assume that you think Keir Starmer should stay in his job just like you did Boris Johnson.
No, because I want people to live up to their own standards. And Keir Starmer went on the record and said that
you have a different view for a Labour leader.
I just want Keir Starmer to follow the standards that he set for other leaders.
And anyway, there is a total difference between what Boris Johnson did in where he lives and works. It's his house, it's
Works
his
from home.
office. Exactly, he works from home. That's another issue. It's his house, it's his garden, etc., etc. He was working with these... But Keir Starmer does not live in the
The
miners'
fact that you
hall in
can't even
Durham.
bring yourself to
Totally
say
different.
that Starmer is a hypocrite over this, to me...
But that's for the police to decide. But look, I have to say, I do think Vicky Hutchings, the woman who was fined, that clearly isn't appropriate. And also, by the way, I thought...
You weren't saying that at the time, though, Benjamin, were you?
I thought...
At the time, you were saying, lock all these people up in their homes and never let them out. Just like Starmer, you wanted harder lockdowns. You wanted the unvaccinated to be blocked into their homes
That's
too.
correct.
So I haven't forgotten that.
I
stand
like Bill
by
Gates,
it.
Benjamin.
I stand by that. The unvaccinated should not have been able to have the
And you
same
also
freedoms as the
believe-
vaccinated
Well,
when we were
that's
still in the
disgusting, by the way.
pandemic.
That's disgusting, by the way. But you also believed in hard lockdowns. You wanted tougher lockdowns. I remember.
Yeah, and if we'd locked down earlier, like Bill Gates said, then we might not have had this problem in the first place.
Oh, my God, please. Now, thanks to antics of Extinction
move on?
Rebellion. Yes, we can. Moving swiftly along. Thanks to the antics of Extinction Rebellion and co domestically and squealing twerps like that little Greta Thunberg. We're not hearing much of her lately, are we? Thank goodness. It feels like the tide is finally starting to turn on climate hysterics, quite literally. In the case of Australian Prime Ministerial candidate Victor Klein. Now, Down Under will vote to elect their new parliament on Saturday, and environmental issues have been right at the fore during campaigning. Enter Klein, who fronts the extremely woke party, the New Liberals, which was founded in 2019. It was probably the most unintentionally hilarious political broadcast ever. The barrister from Sydney is up to his neck, and not only in hysterical eco statements, but seawater too. Look.
Hi, I'm Victor Klein. I'm leader of TNL, and we have a policy for net zero emissions by 2030 to stop the rising waters. If we wait another 20 or 30 years like Liberal, Labor and the Independent want, we'll be in deep water. So if you live in the federal seat of North Sydney and you care about real action on climate change, vote 1 Victor Klein. Before it's...
It's the jump cuts, I think, that did it for me. I've gone mad.
Who is he?
He wants to be Prime Minister. Don't worry, he's not going to be.
He's got climate
not going to be.
derangement syndrome right there.
It's the jump cuts, I think, that shocked me the most. Anyway, enjoy your infamy while it lasts, Mr. Klein. Just like in the advert, I suspect it won't be long before you're all washed up. Well, into Lucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Christine Hamilton do stand by, because coming up, my superstar panel return to debate whether the UK should offer to host Eurovision instead of this year's Winners Ukraine. Amid a cost of living crisis, the public may have other ideas on how to spend £30 million. We'll discuss that in the Media Buzz, plus we'll have more front pages for you then too. But first, with the Northern Ireland Protocol adding more stress to the Tories, is the Conservative Party in need of a total restart? Well, Tory grandee and former Brexit Secretary David Davis joins me in the studio to lay out his master plan for Boris & co. That's next.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Breaking tonight, Boris Johnson has told everyone in Northern Ireland to, quote, roll up their sleeves and get stuck in to help end the paralysis at Stormont after the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, refused to nominate new ministers for the executive. The Prime Minister visited Belfast today for crunch talks with all 5 political leaders amid a standoff over post-Brexit border checks, which has left Northern Ireland without leadership since the Assembly election 10 days ago. He singled out the DUP for playing hardball over its demands to change the Northern Ireland Protocol.
You need leadership and you need government. So you bet. I said to the DUP in particular, we want to see you back in the executive. We want to see you nominating. We want to see a speaker in the Assembly. Of course. Now, the issue they have is that they object to the operation of the protocol. We don't want to scrap it, but we think it can be fixed. And actually, 5 of the 5 parties I talked to today also think it needs reform.
Northern Ireland, just the latest issue for the Prime Minister after a worrying set of local election results and the growing cost of living crisis. So does the Conservative Party need a total restart to set a new agenda? Well, former Brexit Minister David Davis, a Tory grandee, says yes, and he joins me now to reveal his plan. So, look, let's kick off with the Northern Ireland Protocol because, of course, it's the story of the day. You quit as Brexit Minister under Theresa May's
pretty much
government over exactly this. So, do you think Boris has been too conservative here? Does he just need to get rid of this damn thing?
Well, I think, look, the risk of just throwing it out, exercising Article 16, changing it unilaterally, is that we end up with a trade war with the European Union. Nobody wants that. They don't want it because they've got zero growth at the moment. We don't want it. So the trick is to find a diplomatic way through it that works for everybody. Now, one of the big things that the Unionists are reasonably concerned about is the barrier effectively in the Irish Sea between the rest of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. There are ideas for having a sort of green channel so that most of the trade, which is just between ourselves and Northern Ireland, has no implication for Europe, and that can be done with no regulation at all. Then a red channel for those things that might risk going south. That sort of idea. Now, let me just make one point, however. The Good Friday Agreement was there, the way it was designed, was not to give ultimate power to the majority. It was that every minority had to be respected. And when it was created, the Irish government and other governments said, yeah, that's a very good way of approaching it. It's no different now that the minority is a Democratic Unionist Party. You still got to respect the minority. So we need to find a conclusion which fits for everybody. And Boris is starting the right way, I think. And if I were him, once he's done his tour of Northern Ireland, I would go to every capital in Europe, and actually say to them, look, this may have been designed to preserve the Good Friday Agreement. Actually, it's undermining it. Actually, it's destabilising it. Actually, it's doing harm to Northern Ireland. None of you want to do that. Let's find a proper way through. That's the way to do it.
Good idea. OK, let's move on from Northern Ireland because, of course, there is a host of problems facing the Prime Minister. You have a plan, though, David Davis. You have a plan that you think can restart the party and see Boris re-elected if he were to stick with it. So run me through what you're proposing.
Frankly, it's pretty simple. I mean, it starts with that most conservative thing of having low taxes. It is, after all, what we promised in the election, right? And what's happened is we've been driven off our course by COVID and a variety of things, but principally COVID, and all the economic impacts and trade impacts and so on. Now, first thing, therefore, is to start cutting, is to reverse, not cut taxes, to reverse tax increases we put through. We shouldn't have put NICs through. We shouldn't have put the increase in national insurance through. We shouldn't be putting through an increase in corporation tax. Why not? Because we're actually collecting more taxes than we ever have before, partly because we're growing faster than anybody forecast, or we were until last month, and partly because of what they call fiscal drag, which means basically, as inflation comes along, you don't get your tax allowance increased, you still pay. So as your wages go up, you pay more and more taxes. So those things have meant we've got vast amounts of money. We've got about 90 billion more. Remember, all this was about raising 12 billion? We've got 90 billion, more than we expected. So put that right first. Why? Well, number one, cost of living crisis. It solves that. It doesn't solve it outright, but it does a great deal to solve it. Number two, and actually more fundamental almost, is it, if we carry on as we are, we're going to stop our growth rate. And we've been saying it. People like me, people like John Redwood, have been saying this for a year now. Bingo, last month the figures proved it. So that's the first thing.
Stop pretending to be a low-tax party and actually be a low-tax party.
Absolutely.
What about housing, though?
Well,
that's another huge issue.
Then you come down to basically three other big issues. What I'm looking at really are the big issues that people worry about. Now, when I was in my 20s, 65%, nearly two-thirds of my generation bought their own home. Now it's a quarter.
Shocking.
You know? And the rents you pay, if you don't, enormous rents people have to pay. So they've got no chance of saving up the money to buy their own home. Now, why is that? Well, because population's increased by about 7 million, and so we're about 1 million short in number of houses, and about 100,000 houses a year short too. Now, what happens? If you try and do that, people say, I don't want you building next to my house. I don't want you building next to my village. I don't want you taking up my green space. Well, why don't we start building garden villages and garden towns? If you took a helicopter across the United Kingdom, as I have to do too often, if you take a helicopter, it's like flying over a golf course. Most of it's not urban, you know. You can actually do that. And if you did that and you allocated, let's say, 1,000 acres here, and you make a lot of money on the increase in value. Massive. Like that. Yeah? And some of it will go to the landowner, of course, but a chunk of it should go to paying for the community centre and
we'll get those houses we so desperately need.
All those services.
Without upsetting the NIMBYs.
Without upsetting the NIMBYs. You create new houses, they will be bigger. At the moment, our houses built today are half the size they were built in the 20s.
Oh, I know.
And they're the smallest in Europe.
Yeah.
So you can have bigger, cheaper, better houses with good services. What's not to like about that? So that's housing. Then you've got education. When I was at school, this country had the highest social mobility pretty much in the world. Now, we're about the lowest, along with the Americans. What's the big thing there? It's education. And I think we need to completely start re-engineer the classrooms. Because today, if you look at children at the age of 11, half of the children from free school meal homes, which is one measure of poor homes, half of them are failed by the time they're 11. They haven't got good enough English or good enough maths to do all the other subjects. We can't let that go on. So it's a question of really, and we've got lots of technology now, AI technology, screens for kids and so on, give them the best possible lectures, diagnostic tests, there's loads of things can be done there. So that's the second thing, And the third thing, frankly, and this is the one that will cause negative reaction, I think, in some quarters, is I think we should be addressing the complete reform of the health service. I mean, it's always been, Tories have been afraid of this subject because people say, you're trying to privatise it. No, we're not. I want free at the point of delivery. But, Germany has free at the point of delivery. France has free, and Austria and Sweden, but they have better cancer care results than ours.
Yes.
They have lower, they have lesser queues than we do. They have better coronary care. And so all of these things we should be aiming to get for our people. And I think there is now a sort of gap, as it were, in the market, in the political market. I think because people can't get to see their GPs, because they're queuing up to get cancer care, because their tests have been late and so they may die before they get treated. I've had a couple of those cases in my own constituency. There is an appetite to think about this again. We now spend...
honest conversation about the
honest conversation. We already spend more than the OECD average on our healthcare now. Not quite as much as France and Germany, but we're catching up.
And we get worse results. That is
Get
the
worse
issue.
results for more money.
I think that's a good plan. Hope Boris Johnson was listening. Will he do it?
Oh, I don't know. I hope so.
David Davis, former Brexit Minister, thank you so much.
Thank you.
But coming up, has the mask slipped on the Be Kind lefty hypocrites after balaclava-wearing trans activists hijacked a women's rights rally? I'll be joined by the founder of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, to discuss whether these vigilante so-called allies may be doing more harm than good to the trans cause. He's uncancelled at 10:40. But up next, after Sam Ryder ended 24 years of Eurovision humiliation with his second-place finish, should the UK offer to host next year's contest for war-torn winners Ukraine? Slight catch, it's going to cost us £30 million. So I'll get my superstar panel's thoughts right after the break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. More of tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. Lots more front pages are in now, so let's get to them. The Daily Telegraph quotes Governor of the Bank of England warning of apocalyptic global food price rises, adding that he is helpless in the face of surging inflation. Andrew Bailey said he had run out of horsemen when counting the economic shocks facing Britain. Sherry. The Independent also leads on the Bank of England governor's warning of soaring food prices as he told households to prepare for a very big income shock. The Guardian too splashes on that warning from the Bank of England. Bailey insisted to MPs that 80% of the inflation target overshoot was caused by factors outside of the bank's control. Over to the Daily Mail, also focusing on rampant food price rises, and Bailey telling MPs a very real income shock lay ahead, with the highest inflation in 30 years looming. I don't want to lie anymore. That's the I headline as the paper leads on this incredible revelation from the Blackpool striker Jake Daniels, coming out as gay. He's the first English professional footballer to do so for 32 years, and he hopes his decision will inspire Premier League players and change the culture in sport. The reason I say it's so incredible is that this bloke is only 17 years old, so good on him for making that change at such a young age. On the front of the Times, petrol firm profiteers failed to pass on duty cut. Britain's petrol retailers have been accused of profiteering from the energy crisis after research found they hadn't passed on nearly half of Rishi Sunak's 5p fuel duty cut. And The Sun leads on the latest revelations actually in the Agatha Christie libel trial. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. We're all following it, aren't we? Colleen Rooney today branded Rebecca Vardy a liar who sent, quote, evil messages about her. And a bombshell revelation there from Posh Spice, famous for her restrictive diet, saying thin is not in. I've been saying that for the past 20 years. Get with the programme, Posh. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel. Returning to join me, the media personality Christine Hamilton, senior reporter for the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. Now, for almost a quarter of a century, a good result for the United Kingdom at Eurovision has meant coming anywhere other than last place and avoiding the dreaded nil point. But during this year's contest on Saturday, something remarkable happened. Our entry, the soaring spaceman by TikTok sensation Sam Ryder, rocketed into second place, giving us our best finish since 1998 and the highest number of points in our entire 64-year history of competing. So here's a reminder of that sensational performance from Sam. Honestly, it was a fantastic night, made even better by the fact that Sam's glorious success proved the Britain-hating BBC wrong. Because make no mistake, our success at the weekend was very much down to the hands-off approach taken by the snobs at Auntie, who essentially subcontracted the selection of this year's entry to hitmaker Ben Mawson, the man who discovered the chart topper Dua Lipa. And thank God, because as I wrote in my Mail Online column earlier today, the defeatism of BBC bosses who have spent years insisting that Europe hates us and therefore there's no point sending a decent entry was a total fallacy. Our previous Eurovision failures fits with the corporation's broader worldview that Brexit Britain is something to be disdained. But now, one great song has blasted the UK's Eurovision chances into a new gallery, whether the Beeb likes it or not. As many predicted, it was Ukraine that triumphed on the night, dominating the public vote in a symbolic display of solidarity following the invasion by Russia, of course. Russia banned from competing at the weekend. However, the result has put a massive question mark over whether the war-torn country will be able to host the 2023 contest, as is tradition. Ukraine's winning artists and President Zelensky are adamant they will be able to pull off the feat, but speculation about alternative arrangements has already begun. In addition to this year's hosts, Italy, Poland, Spain and Sweden have offered to put on the ceremony, but as runners-up and one of Ukraine's closest allies in Europe, the UK has to be the presumptive choice, right? And Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng has confirmed we will step up to the plate.
If Ukraine is unable to host Eurovision next year, would you like the UK to do it?
Of course, it would be an honour for us to host it, but I'm very clear that President Zelensky is fully confident that Ukraine will be able to host the contest next year, and I look forward to watching it there.
Eurovision doesn't come cheap. By the way, in recent years, the final ball footed by host nations has come close to £30 million, with Azerbaijan splashing a record £50 million in 2012. And that's before you even add in the £84 million they spent on a fit-for-purpose stadium. So with the cost of living crisis hitting Brits hard and leading to increased scrutiny of state spending, should the UK really be considering hosting Eurovision 2023? Well, Benjamin Butterworth, you're just back from Turin, and I presume you say absolutely.
I do. I mean, look, £30 million is obviously a lot of money, but I think in a country like Britain, it's a drop in the ocean for the kind of money we spend on events. And actually, if you think back to the London 2012 Olympics, well, that's the only example in modern times of an Olympics that actually made a profit for the host country. So we're in a unique position to make the most of events like this. And you know, I think that given that, you know, this claim that Ukraine can host it, look, it's not going to happen. It won't be possible in 12 months. The kind of infrastructure, the 20,000 hotel rooms that a host city needs to be able to qualify for them, to consider them as a host city.
But Zelensky's saying, no, we're going to be fine.
Of course, and I'm sure we will keep saying that, we being the British government, for a while, because that's a diplomatic way to do it. But there's no chance it's going to be there. And given we came second, Europe wanted us, then I think it has to be the UK hosting it.
By the way, Benjamin, I'm right about those boneheads at the BBC, aren't I? For years and years and years, they always said, oh, there's no point. There's no point even trying. They hate us because of Brexit. They hate us because of Boris. No. We just had crap songs, BBC.
I mean, look, you'll use anything to bash the BBC.
Well, am I right?
Well, they made the decision to put it out to this company that did such a great job.
They didn't. You should read my column.
I did.
Do you know what happened?
I did.
The guy behind Dua Lipa actually said to the BBC, why don't we just take it on for you? And they basically couldn't refuse an offer like that.
And they did a great job. And I would happily say, I can't remember the last time I was so proud to be British. I was over the moon. And I was there in the Eurovision village in Turin.
So the BBC have got it wrong for the past 10 years, because they tried to kill Eurovision off. They actually tried to kill Eurovision off. They're snobby, Christine. They looked down on it. They were very snary. And actually, what this song proves is they got it completely wrong. Europe doesn't hate us if we have a good song. France gave us 12 points and they really hate us.
Macron must be choking on his croissant or whatever he eats that out of the night. I mean, honestly. But I do actually agree with Benjamin. I think it's a little bit presumptuous in a way to be talking about this now, because I agree with you that Ukraine will unfortunately never be able to get it together, but I still think that it is theirs if they want it. People are carping about this £30 million. That is peanuts. We have just pledged early in May 1.3 billion to Ukraine, which is double what we'd already pledged.
Belinda, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Is it about how it looks?
No.
Belinda?
Well, not only that. I think it's a bit rich, really, because Eurovision isn't massively popular in the UK. I mean, it's getting more popular. We had, I think, about 2 million more viewers this time
more popular
round
if we start winning.
Behind. But the thing is, I've never been a fan of Eurovision. It triggers me about the EU Parliament.
What?
It is just, I know, I'm sorry.
But it's
like
not about
full
the
of,
EU.
Well, no, I know that, but it's full of very well-meaning, lovely people who produce bands, and they tend to be judged on how popular their countries are politically, rather than quality of the
I know
fans.
why you feel this, but I just want to read out what Sam Ryder had to say about that, because I thought it was absolutely great. He basically was talking about exactly that. Are all of these people against us? And he said, the stigma that we carry at home that the UK isn't liked is something we choose to repeat. It's nothing more than a negative thought pattern. We're just torturing ourselves. It's time we gave it up. And I agree with that.
Well, say we choose, it's the BBC choose to repeat. It's like the Emma Thompson quote,
100%.
England is a cake-filled, misery-laden old grey island. That's exactly what the BBC thinks about the UK.
Not an island.
She's the
Final word, Christine.
Two things quickly. First of all, people are banging on about the cost of electricity for hosting Europe. Why don't we go back to people just singing a song? We don't need all this electronic hype. I mean, congratulations, Waterloo. They didn't have all this electricity.
You've got to move with the times, Christine.
And I do want... this is really important. Why should I move with the times? The Ukraine Special Envoy on Sanctions said, and I think this is an amazing quote, it's a fabulous tribute to this country, he said about Eurovision, it should have been yours, but you Brits are those Europeans who know what's right and what's wrong. Now, isn't that great?
Very true, love
Good
that.
endorsement.
Now, Donald Trump has kept up the hype about a possible presidential run in 2024, even telling GBNews' Nigel Farage exclusively last year that he didn't see another option, even though he stopped short of a definite yes for campaign finance reasons. And last night, former First Lady Melania Trump ramped up the fanfare after hinting at a possible return to the White House in an interview with Fox News.
I like Washington, D.C. I know it operates completely different than any other city, but I really like it there, and I enjoyed living in the White House. To be First Lady of the United States was my greatest honor. I enjoyed taking care of the White House. It was my home for a while. I understood it is a people's house. It was a privilege to live there.
And maybe it'll be your home again?
Never say never.
Never say never.
Serious hint there. Now, whether Trump decides to run or not, you can't deny that his popularity is soaring again, something sleepy Joe Biden can only dream of at this point. His biggest threat, not actually the serving president, but rather Florida's Republican government, Ron DeSantis. Now, do stand by. Belinda DeLucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Christine Hamilton, because coming up, what do Jurgen Klopp, Maggie Thatcher and Heathrow Airport have in common? Well, they're all nominees for today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Find out who
or potentially what? I crown today's winner very shortly. But first, are the balaclava bullies who violently disrupted a women's rights rally in the name of trans activism, damaging the cause more than anybody else? Top political commentator Toby Young on that next. First, a very quick look about what's coming up tomorrow.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as the gender wars rage on, activist Cara Bell, who lived as a trans man in her teens, shares her story of transition regret that you won't hear in the liberal media. Plus, it's a night of unfiltered opinion from expert commentators including Nigel Farage and my superstar panel. Former Daily Star editor and current columnist Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and making her return, the author and journalist Rebecca Reed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. The dark underbelly of trans activism was exposed yesterday as a women's rights rally was aggressively hijacked by a gang of masked extremists. A lone woman was assaulted at the Standing for Women event as counter-protesters from the Manchester Trans Rise Up movement surrounded the city's statue of suffragette hero Emmeline Pankhurst in St Peter's Square. But the brave feminist, waving a purple, white and green suffragette flag, defiantly stood her ground. Look.
Get your hands off me. You're grabbing my Hey, stop. I don't know how we're going to do this. You came into a space and stood. It's not your space, it's a public space. So what's Excuse me.
J.K. Rowling tweeted about that. I never expected the right side of history to include so many people in masks intimidating and assaulting women. Did you? But she never dropped her flag. Emmeline would be proud. Well, top political commentator, founder of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, joins me now. Toby, I mean, nasty scenes like these are actually damaging the trans cause, aren't they?
Yes, I think they are. I have no idea why this activist group in Manchester, I think they're Manchester Trans Rise Up, decided to stage this protest. A group of feminists decided to hold a meeting in a public square in Manchester in front of a statue of Emmeline Pankhurst, one of the leaders of the suffragettes. And for some reason, this group of woke activists decided to stage this protest and stand in front of the statue of Emmeline Pankhurst to try and prevent these feminists standing in front of it and making speeches. I mean, completely unnecessary, provocative, unpleasant thing to do. And as we saw in that particular clip, one woman was, more or less assaulted by one of these protesters. And the irony, Dan, is that there was a police officer from Manchester Police standing by and looking on, did absolutely nothing to intervene to protect that woman clutching that flag. And afterwards, when someone else had stepped in to protect her, the police then interviewed her and threatened to arrest her for a breach of the peace.
Toby, that's one irony. I completely agree. But isn't the other major irony here the fact that actually it's big, burly blokes who are taking on women physically?
It's incredible, Dan. I mean, part of the kind of communications strategy of trans activists is to portray trans people as these fragile victims, threatened by these burly feminists. And yet here they were at this demonstration dressed up like ninjas, in order to try and be as intimidating as possible. I mean, on the one hand, it's extremely sinister. It's not going to win anyone over to their cause. It's going to persuade absolutely no one of the rightness of their cause. It's just going to generate sympathy for these gender-critical feminists. But at the same time, it was so extreme, the attempt to intimidate and frighten, so over the top, it actually spills over into comedy. and they look absolutely ridiculous. You know, and if anything is going to damage the woke cause, Dan, it's the woke cause becoming just hilariously uncool. And that's what J.K. Rowling said about these protesters. It was a hilarious own goal. You know, the one thing the woke have going for them is they're supposed to be kind of somehow cool on the right side of history, these sort of social justice warriors. And here they are dressing up like action figures that you'd expect to see kids wearing on, you know, come as your favorite book day at school. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
OK, no good. You've made me feel better about it now, Toby. Let's just laugh at these absolute idiots. But when it comes to big, burly blokes threatening some sort of physical violence against biological women, that's when I draw the line. But great analysis, as ever, from Toby Young. Thank you, Toby. We'll speak soon. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. My superstar panel back with me now. Christine Hamilton, let's kick off with you. Who's your nominee for Greatest Britain tonight, Christine?
Well, I was going to nominate the Queen, but I think she's probably been done rather a lot of times. I loved the way she chose what she loves best, you know, horses, family, etc., over the opening of Parliament.
Yes.
Good for her. But I've actually gone for Prince William because he's had a lifelong attachment to football. He's the president of FIFA and he was booed by the fans. And not only did he stand up to that very dignified way, he also has flushed out Starmer, because Starmer, when the people who took Black Lives Matter were booed, he said nobody should boo. And
I think exactly what happened. I think we've got a little clip of that booing, actually, in case you missed it. Yeah, don't like that at all.
Horrible, absolutely horrible.
Yeah. Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Mine is Sam Ryder, the UK Eurovision entry, who led us to our best result in over 2 decades, and I think he made us all proud to be British on Saturday night.
And Belinda de Lucy, I believe your nominee may relate to what I was just discussing with Toby Young.
Yes, absolutely. My nominee is Standing for Women, the courageous campaign group set up by Posey Parker that goes up and down the country just talking about defending women's rights from extreme transzealotry. They were the ones that defended Emmeline Pankhurst's statue, waving the flag, even when they were manhandled by these aggressive misogynistic ninjas. They take all the flack and abuse for us women. They are my nominee today.
All great choices, but, you know, I'm a big Eurovision softie, aren't I? So I'm with Benjamin Butterworth tonight. Well done, you, Sam Ryder, winning the jury vote at Eurovision. Who would have thought it? Union jackass time now. Christine Hamilton, your nominee.
Well, it's that complete and utter idiot, Jeremy Webster, who threw the egg at the Margaret Thatcher statue. He is on the public payroll. He's the deputy head of some arts centre. He described her as a disgraced animal. If anyone's a disgraced animal, Jeremy Webster, it's you.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Mine is Heathrow Airport, because Frank Gardner, the veteran BBC journalist who's in a wheelchair, was left on his flight because there were no staff to take him off. It's just appalling, and whether you're an amazing journalist like him or any other disabled person, you really shouldn't.
I saw that tweet. I was absolutely outraged by it, and I thought good on Frank Gardner for raising that, actually. Yeah, there it is. I was just so angry for him. Belinda de Lucy, your Union Jackass nominee.
Mine is an honorary Union Jackass. It is Jurgen Klopp, the manager of Liverpool football team, for his response, his shameful response to all the booing that his fans made at the match. And he said that they were wonderful fans and they must have had a reason to do it. A total insult to our Queen, monarchy, and hypocritical, because I bet he didn't like the booing about BLM.
More good choices, but I'm going to go with Christine Hamilton and Jeremy Webster, the egg thrower. Get a life, mate. Brilliant superstar panel tonight. Thank you. First time, Belinda de Lucy. Thank you for Benjamin Butterworth and Christine Hamilton. Good night.
Good evening. Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Some thunderstorms around this evening, and there could well be a few more tomorrow evening. But for most of tomorrow, it's going to be a fine and pretty warm day, especially over eastern England. Weather systems are out in the Atlantic, but they're not really making much progress. What they are doing is drawing up warm and humid air from the south, and that's why we've had a few thunderstorms today. Clearing away from northeast England during this evening. Northeast Scotland likely to stay quite cloudy with rain at times overnight. But for most, it's going to be a A dry night, maybe turning a little misty in places, and temperatures not dropping too far, 10 or 11 the low. And as I said, for most it's going to be a fine day tomorrow. Plenty of hazy sunshine on offer. Any early morning mist will clear. The coast of eastern Scotland up to Orkney may stay pretty misty and murky, and there'll be a lot of cloud for Northern Ireland. And this cloud will provide some outbreaks of rain that will just at times affect West Wales, southwest England, and move into western Scotland, where it could be quite heavy, particularly by the end of the day. A cooler feel here as well, with temperatures in the mid-teens, but further east with some sunshine, widely over 20 Celsius. Across the southeast up to East Anglia, 26, maybe 27 is possible. It'll be cooler where it stays misty along the coast across the far northeast as well. That rain is likely to pep up and spread more widely across the country during the evening. The threat of further thunderstorms across East Anglia and the southeast before, again, all that rain tends to shift out of the way as we head through the early hours of Wednesday morning. And again, then for Wednesday, most of the day will be dry and bright. A brighter day for Northern Ireland, West Wales, with some good spells of sunshine. There will be a few showers across the Highlands and the Western Isles. But as I say, for most, Wednesday's another fine, pretty warm day. Maybe not quite as warm as Tuesday, but temperatures still widely into the high teens or low to even mid-20s across the southeast. Goodbye.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all